Hello, art friends. Thank you so much for being a Patreon supporter. It means a lot to me that you are here helping me with my arty endeavors. And as promised, here is the video for this month's piece. And as you can see, it's a hoot. It is an owl. And you saw the two images that I put up on the post. I will get into that here in a second. One of those two pictures was the bottom half of, as you might have guessed, my shower curtain. I was yet again inspired by the shower curtain. I don't even know what to say about that. It's the unlikely places that something might catch your eye and just pop an idea in your head. But when I saw the bottom half, it looked kind of like, I don't know, a bear, maybe a panda, and had all these interesting little, lines and features, and just looked, I don't know, futuristic, and I loved it. I had to do something with it. And if you follow me on Instagram or on Facebook, you've probably already seen a few of the animals that I've done so far, the cat and the fox, and I've done a reboot of the fox with watercolor. So I decided this one wasn't going to do it in watercolor, but you'll see what I'm gonna do it with. So I sketched this owl out for the 40-day drawing challenge and then decided not to use it for the challenge. I just did a regular owl for the 40-day drawing challenge. So I went ahead and I resketched it larger, because for the 40-day challenge I've been doing smaller sized pieces. And this one started out as like 2.5 by 3.5 inches. So I had to resketch it. And then it wasn't quite as big as I wanted it. And I'm lazy, I didn't want to sketch it again. I liked the way it looked, it was just the wrong size. So I went ahead and popped it through the printer and the scanner and enlarged it. And here you can see here you can see I am transferring the image onto my Canson watercolor paper, because I'm going to be using gouache for this piece. Oh, you can see my 2 palettes and the pad of watercolor paper. It is 140-pound watercolor paper, which I will get into the gouache a little bit more here. I did want to talk about the background inspiration, and that was a secondary picture that was on my post. This picture was done in 1993. My friend and I got in these phases where we just wanted to doodle and draw constantly, and this is what we came up with. We would both have our own version of this chaotic craziness that might be going in our mind. So I came across this while I was going through some old stacks of notebooks and papers and random craziness, and had to use it. I was inspired to use that for a background. Maybe not as chaotic and crazy and with all the little bits and baubles that are in there. But I did want to do a more adult version, if you will. A cleaner version. Something that's a little more appealing to my taste now. So you can see that's what I have going on in the background. And of course I was inspired a little bit by Dali and a little bit by Peter Max with my background imagery. You can see those droopy, curvy circles. They look like the melting clocks, and I have this lace algae little pieces everywhere. I mean, this is what speaks to me, is that, the sci-fi from, way back when. You can pick a time frame. Anywhere from like the 40s up until the 70s, it had a very similar aesthetic to it. Which is also what inspired my color choices. I have affinity for the teals and the seafoam greens and the dusty rose colors. It's not appealing to everybody, but it made this piece more enjoyable and relaxing to see these colors. Is gouache different from acrylic or watercolor? It's a medium that's right in between acrylic and watercolor. it has a mid-range consistency and vibrancy of color. Acrylic tends to be a heavy-bodied material and takes quite a while to dry because it's so thick. And once it does fully dry, without a solvent to re-wet it, you can't mix on top of it or blend on top of it. Watercolor is very viscous, and I mean, if you've used it, you know. It soaks right into the paper, it takes a while to dry, and you can layer colors. They're just not solid layerings of colors, and you can mix them, and they blend well, and you can get some pretty cool gradient effects and other effects. Gouache, as you can see in my palette here, has a gel-like consistency to start with, but you can add more water, and the more water you add, the more of a watercolor effect you have, and the less water you add, the more it tends to act like an acrylic. But the dry time is right in the middle. It doesn't really take that long. That's why you see me circling the page around and working almost in a circle. One, so that my left-handedness doesn't get in the way, because I do tend to lay my hand in the wet paint or right on top of pen that I've just drawn, and it smears everywhere. This way I can work around the page, and by the time I get back around to that spot, it's dried enough to put another layer on top, or to at least lay my hand on it so that it's not wet. Now with gouache, when you want to add a layer to something that's already dried, that bottom layer is not going to play dead. It's going to react. It's going to soak the water in. It's going to be able to be blended. And if you work the area too much, it's going to get a little muddy. But if you go on lightly to add highlights or to blend in a little bit of shading that you might have missed, it plays together very well. And it's one of my top reasons right there is just the flexibility of this medium. It dries quick. You can blend, you can get all these really cool patterns and tones. You can see to the right in the top corner, the brown I added just little drops of water, and it's spread out in spider webs and creates this really cool effect. I'm going to be utilizing that quite a bit in the rest of this as well. So with acrylic, if you want a lighter shade, you need to add white. If you want a darker shade, you have to use some form of brown, dark blue, or black. With gouache, if you want a lighter color, just add a little bit more water to it and you'll get a lighter tone. You can just have a wash effect. You can also add white or black or dark brown to lighten and darken gouache. So there's a lot of flexibility. With watercolor, all there is water. You add more water. You add more water until that color is the lightness that you want it. And even with watercolor, there is white. I've never seen a purpose for this because it just gets washed out. But you can utilize it. So I'm using two different types of gouache for this painting. I'm using the Holbein gouache that I just received as a gift from my wonderfully awesome boyfriend. Thank you, boyfriend. It means so much to me to get like these awesome quality gouache sets. Because I've been using Reeves to kind of get back into the swing of things, and Reeves is a student quality. It's chalky. It has good pigmentation. I'm not gonna knock it. I've been using it and I do enjoy it other than the chalkiness. It blends well. It doesn't have a good light fast, but most gouaches don't unless they have an acrylic in them. So the Holbein gouache I just got and have not fully set up a palette. I've set up a very basic palette, so I decided to use both the Reeves and the Holbein kind of together because I already set up the Reeves to the colors that I like to use, all these muted tones. So I need to stop being lazy and set up my new palette. I decided that getting this done was a little more important than setting up a new palette. With the Reeves, I will mention, if you are sensitive to smells, this has a very medicinal, antibacterial, antimicrobial, reminds me of hospital smells. It's a little weird. I'd also describe it as smelling like Scotch tape. So it's got that chemical smell to it. The Hoban gouache does not have a smell. So if that's going to be a factor for you, I'd spend a little more money and go ahead and get the Hoban or get Winsor & Newton. There's a bunch of them out there that you could try. If you just want a cheap one and you don't mind a little bit of a smell, I say go for the Reeves just to try it out. Give it a shot. So here I'm going in with my small brush. I used 2 different brushes up until this point in the video. I've used a fine tip 0 round, and I've also used a 6 round watercolor brush. Of course, you can get some really good details with a 6 or a 5 or a 4 with the fine tip on it. I do prefer just to use a 0 to go into those little itty bitty places. And you can probably see a few of these spots where I've added the color in. The blue section that I add the yellow dots was a little bit drier than the pink sections that I added orange into. And of course, the more water you have in those areas, the more spread. The effect looks more like a tie-dye or spider webbing or veining. And if you have less water, you can get a good solid structured shape on there or design. When I'm going in and putting all these little red slashes and dots, that background portion has already fully dried and there's very little water. And the paint that I'm using to fill in those areas has very little water. So there's not much chance for it to blend or to get muddy. Everything's nice and dry. And there's even a few sections in here that I re-wet before I went back in to add shading or highlights into them. So I want to apologize for giving you a 17-minute video, or just about 17 minutes of a video. It was really hard paring this down. I didn't want to skip over a lot of the content, even though some of it was a little repetitive in the sections that I painted. I think there's 3 sections where I used a peach and an orange together, or the light background, the ivory with the orange red. But it was just hard trying to filter out a lot of this. It took over 6.5 hours, and I had 3 to 4 hours of 3 to 4 hours. And I had just about 4 hours of video filmed. Paring down around 4 hours of video into 16-ish, 17 minutes. I feel awful. This is a very long video. But I want to make sure you get to see the process, and if there's any points that you want to slow down to see what it looks like, you can. The whole time that I've been, working on this, I kind of had an idea of where I was going to put the colors, except the bird. I had no idea. I didn't know what I wanted to do with the owl. I knew I had to have my elements right and get them as close to metal, or at least a whimsical metal, that I could. I didn't need it hyper realistic, but I wasn't entirely sure if I wanted to do the owl a color. My reference image, the owl is white with blue and little hints of yellow, which I thought was beautiful. It's like a little snow owl. So I'm just going to put a couple touches of blue and gray and do some highlights. And hopefully he stands out on his own and isn't drowned in this crazy chaotic background. I'd love to know what you guys thought about the video and this month's image. If you have any comments or you have any questions about the process that I didn't go over or was unclear about, or how gouache works, just let me know. I am more than happy to help out. Thank you guys so much for being my Patreons. I love each and every one of you cheeky monkeys. I'll catch you guys next month.